All right, good evening everyone. My name is Michael Waser. I'm the Deputy Head of the Education Section here at the Embassy, and it's my pleasure to announce tonight's host, the Ambassador of Switzerland to China, His Excellency Jean-Jacques Dudardel. Before I give the floor to you, dear Mr. Ambassador, I will quickly announce something about tonight's program. After Ambassador's welcome remarks, the committee to my left will take over the program and will guide you through tonight's program. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Professor, friends, colleagues, alumni, I've been introduced as stepping up to the mic for the welcome remarks. But you see, the essence of the Graduate Institute is that it produces excellence not only at all levels, but at all times. And so it is that extraordinarily, I have been provided with a speech which has been masterminded by some excellence that is embodied in the true alumni of the Graduate Institute. So I will pay my respects to those who drafted those words that they wanted me to not forget. I won't read my speech, but I will refer to a written text. Because you see, those will not be only welcoming remarks. I'm not going to lecture you either. But this is a solemn moment. And if I dare say, and I don't see how you could dispute the notion, we are about to live a defining and a new chapter in the history of mankind. Because it's all about the creation of a new chapter. So it is a new chapter in the history of mankind, isn't it? You could dispute it, but still. It's a wonderful occasion to meet around something that has substance and is established worldwide. I understand that at this stage we have an alumni network of 13,000 people. Of course, 13,000 is never much in China because of the numbers we constantly relate to. But think of it as 13,000 pillars of excellence, of knowledge, and of international relations spread around the world because they themselves come from over 100 countries. And so we have friends and colleagues almost everywhere. And I understand also that these alumni, with the help of the Institute itself, have been already organized in about 21 chapters in cities and places as diverse as Bogota, Kinshasa, or New York. And in China, yes, there already is an established chapter in Shanghai. But that's not enough. And some coalesced around the idea that it is about time, it is actually crucial to establish an alumni chapter in Beijing, given the importance that Beijing now has in world affairs and, of course, in China itself. So, a great many thanks to all of you because you're making this possible by coming together here tonight. It's an important and joyful moment for this Graduate Institute Alumni Network, and for me particularly, it is with joy that I see this happening at my own residence. You obviously understand that I'm an alumni myself because I've got a tag. I've worked towards my PhD from 75 to 80 at the Institute. And then I went back to the Institute as a young diplomat, a young trainee at the time, for a full semester. I could have perhaps escaped the obligation, but for me it wasn't an obligation. It was a pleasure to go back to that alma mater. And believe me, after having completed my master's in economics, that's another part of my life, at the Geneva University, and after having been in many different places around the world, it was more than joy. It was really a high level of intellectual satisfaction that had me open up my mind through my presence at the Institute. An experience that most all of you have behind you, or will have for the few who haven't been there yet. And that openness of mind, I must say, had a lot to do with the fact that for the first time in my life, I found that my fellow students were sometimes even more interesting and in many respects even more knowledgeable than my professors. And they brought me even more than my readings. And I also remember those seconds of bewilderment when I turned to a fellow next to me who was studying as intensely as I was trying to and listening to the lecture, and who was an African gentleman of a certain age, and he happened to have been the president of the UN Security Council. But he was a student, because as a diplomat from his country, he had then moved from New York to Geneva. But the reputation of the Institute was such that he had decided to add that to his bio by following courses at the Institute. And so that's the kind of, well, environment that I got familiar with at the time. Now, indeed, there are also a good number of very famous alumni. I understand the number of Nobel Prize winners is always a reference for a university. We have 7. I hope to be able to say and counting, because of course I expect new ones to come by, but we'll have to wait for that. 7 Nobel Prize winners, including Kofi Annan, who happens to be my good cousin, because his wife is a cousin of mine. 1 Pulitzer Prize winner, 5 heads of state, and countless ministers of government, state ministers, government officials, academics, very well-known people, and I've checked on Wikipedia. 300 literati are mentioned and owe part of their fame to having been at HEI. And here I introduce what I refer to, my graduate institute at the time was HEI. And bear with me if I use that terminology. Now, HEI was founded in 1927. We tend to forget that it's also quite old. And in the international world, that was old. It owes a lot to its co-founder, William Rappard, who was the first director for 27 years, and who himself was a leading Swiss academic and official, who was extremely instrumental in actually bringing the League of Nations to Geneva, because his friendship with President Woodrow Wilson and his influence over President Wilson enabled the creation of the League of Nations in Geneva. So that, of course, was a marvelous environment for them. The creation of this unique institution, which was the first institution in the world dedicated entirely to the study of international affairs. The original statutes declared, this I'll read, declare the mission of the Institute as such: an institution intended to provide students of all nations, which didn't go without saying at the time, the means of undertaking and pursuing international studies, most notably of a historic, judicial, economic, political, and social nature. Well, that translates into major elements of the Institute. And that's cosmopolitanism, a sense of global responsibility and multidisciplinary approach to meet real-world challenges. That's what makes the Institute. They were embedded in its mission from day one, but they were carried over and carried forward by then those, as students and academics, who embodied them forever then. And today, HEID, HEID, the new acronym, very difficult for an HEIA comme moi, educates 840 students in over half of the world's countries, so it's not bad. We know now, and I'm very jealous, that the beautiful surroundings around the lake have been complemented by a beautiful Maison de la Paix. So whoever goes back to HEI now gets the benefit of a wonderful glass house, or glass houses, and a much more extensive campus. So we can all be proud of what HEI has become. 840 students, that's a very small number of students, but that makes also for a particularly vivid interpersonal connection. It brings people together a lot more on a one-on-one basis than would be the case in very large institutions. And in that sense, HEI is not your ordinary university institution. It's a rather exclusive one in its essence, and where you learn about the world through the people you meet, through your classmates, and without knowing, you extend your bonds and your feeling of the necessity for bonds well beyond what you consider to be studies. It's a study of personalities and an extension of your own personality. Now that also nurtures a respect for diversity. It develops a craving for interdisciplinarity, as I was telling you. And believe me, as you walk around universities and the world, you'll see that what to us seems absolutely self-evident. That is that the truth may be approached from different sides, through different disciplines, is not at all followed elsewhere. There are mental barriers which then carry over and which create new barriers, whereas our way of having discovered that openness is certainly the order of the better day, that is really something that we can relate to and be happy about. Makes us understand the complexity of global issues without being too tainted by different ideologies. They all meet at HEI, these different ideologies, and we tend to go beyond. So now at this stage, I'll share with you an anecdote which has been whispered into my ear and which links the Institute directly to China and from some good times past. It's an epitome of early Sino-Swiss cooperation in as much as in the 80s, that's a long time ago, having enacted the reform and opening up policy, China was deeply in need of equipping its officials with world knowledge. I discovered China in '86, and I can vouch for that, it's true. Constrained by its financial and political resources, Chinese ministries had but a handful of institutions abroad where they could train their own staff and government officials. One of them being HEI, where the Chinese government went on trying to negotiate a better deal by asking, can we double the size of our attendees if we take care of their accommodation by ourselves? And that worked. And indeed, the doubling enabled more Chinese government officials to go through HEI, to develop a personal tie and link to Switzerland. Of course, I'm very happy about that. And to probably instill some openness of mind in their colleagues once back. And I am told that a number of government officials and foreign affairs officials are to be mentioned, like Mr. He Yafei, former Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Mr. Hu Qingjian, former Chinese ambassador to Chad, but there are many others. Now, this pattern of cooperation has continued. Today, the Graduate Institute sends students, does send its students to different Chinese universities for exchange programs, and that's Tsinghua, Fudan, and Peking University. But it also has established a joint BA and MA program with Peking University. That's Beijing University. Also known as 3+2 program. That's because students are enrolled and expected to complete a bachelor or master studies in both in schools in 5 years instead of 6. And I understand students of the program's first ever intake will soon depart for Geneva in August. I sense here and there perhaps some excitement because some of you are here, and I wish you well on that beautiful step in what awaits you throughout life. And I will refer, I like cars, you see, and when I see a 3+2 or 2+2, I refer to Gran Turismo cars. They're sporty, sexy type of cars. And I would say that 3+2 should lead you to believe that you're stepping into the limousine of Gran Turismo racing cars. Now, because I'm a senior school fellow, I understand you will have noticed that I have gray hair. I have been offered the privilege of introducing 3 younger alumni who have energetically initiated this Beijing chapter's creation. And I refer to Ting Fan, Natalie Birch, and Qiang Wu. We have to understand that Natalie has been forced to leave us because of professional reasons, so she has had to pass on. But we're lucky because Adrian Schmid has taken her role and will carry forward what she has started. And so, Ting Fan, Qiang Wu, and Adrian Schmid are now ready to serve as members of the chapter's interim administrative board until the first election. I think we will all throughout the evening go on thanking them personally and congratulating them on this initiative, which we all support, but they were first to bring forward. Now, in closing, I'd like to share with you my own thoughts about what it means to be part of an alumni network. In my own life, and because I've traveled and lived here and there, I'm a diplomat's son, so I went through very many different schools and different languages and different countries and cultures. It's the Anglo-Saxon culture which has created and brought through the alumni notion and the alumni networks. And I must say that of all my institutions, it is my English public school, that's a very private school, which has kept its ties with its alumni to the point that I started understanding quite early on the value of that kind of network. Not that I would have made use of it, but if I had wanted to, I could have. And I realized that that was wonderful. And that was lacking in non-Anglo-Saxon milieus. And so, little by little, I did everything I could personally as a diplomat to favor the creation of chapters, to favor alumni reunions, and indeed to make it possible to interact and develop, how should I say, a substantial network based on a commonality of history. And there is a utilitarian approach, perhaps, to networking in today's world. But there should also be this intellectual, emotional approach, because there is a sense of family. And that family is an intellectual one. It is an openness of mind. It is something absolutely wonderful. So after having created or helped create or housed a number of alumni chapters from different institutions, most of them I had nothing to do with, St. Gallen University, EHL, or the GCSP in Geneva, and so on and so forth. This time, it's our own, and it's my own alma mater, so I'm extremely proud. And before I start crying out of emotion, I'll just say cheers, and congratulations to the ones who are going to carry the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My family members, like the Ambassador just said. My name is Ting Fan. I'm a graduate of master program of in Development Studies between 2011 and 2013. It's my great pleasure to organize this event. And also, I thank my team to be together to make a wonderful event. Being in this room with you, it's as if I've never left Geneva. I can imagine with so many similarly internationally minded people, the member of this group would like to continue to connect to each other. But all this will not happen if it weren't that Mr. Ambassador gave his great support to host this event. as well as help from our friends from science, technology, and education section of the embassy. So all my most sincere gratitude and appreciation go to Mr. Ambassador, Michael, Chen Chen, and also Yuan. Thank you so much. Let me very briefly introduce to you our team members and a very quick history about the preparation of this chapter. The gentleman to my left is Adrian Schmidt. Is it correct?
That is absolutely correct. That's how we try to fit it out.
Okay, great. He's the acting vice president of the interim administrative board, as vice president Natalie Birch is currently away. He will brief you very soon on activities planned for the future. The lady further to my left is Qian Wu. She took a leading role in formulating the statute of the Beijing chapter. She serves as secretary of the interim administrative board. Shortly, she's going to present you the final draft and call for a motion to adopt the draft as the chapter's formal statute, so the chapter can be legally established. My team and I worked a few months to launch the chapter, and it all started back in April when Professor Cedric Dupont of the Graduate Institute, during his visit to Beijing, encouraged us to start a local chapter. On 29th of May, some of you may remember, I wrote an email to many Beijing-based alumni about this idea. A number of people replied with warm welcome and expressed interests in participating. More fortunately, Mr. Ambassador offered to host the event in his residence. In mid-May, Natalie, Chen, and I met at Hohai, a beautiful place, to have our first preparatory discussion. In the next 2 months or so, we managed to do mainly two things. First, the finalization of the draft statute of the chapter. And secondly, to connect to the rest of Beijing alumni. That was the introduction of my team and a brief prehistory of the Beijing chapter. Now I'd like to invite Adrian Schmidt to talk about the activities, the most exciting part, and then Chen about the statute. Adrian, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. I always wanted to say this line. And let me just start with enjoying the view. Because usually I see the room from the other side. Working here at the embassy, you might have noticed that I'm also playing with the sound of the microphone. It's just because I know how to use the box. So if I'm too loud, somebody can run over and turn it off. It's okay. Okay. Actually, for me, it's a particular pleasure to have been at the Institute last year and to now see a crowd of people that is very familiar to me, and not only because I work with you, like in the first row or in the third row, it's also because the person I've learned Chinese with at the Graduate Institute is sitting in the crowd in the second row, and because some people that I met during the summer barbecue here were going to study at the Graduate Institute are also here. So the interconnectedness of the Graduate Institute crowd and the diversity, as the ambassador has mentioned it before, is visible to me, and it's for me a personal pleasure to be part of this crowd. And then, before I start with the events itself, I'd like to compliment a remark of the ambassador who has mentioned that the Graduate Institute, besides the lake, is absolutely magnificent. I think we should all go together to the cafeteria of the new Graduate Institute, because that was one of my favorite places, not only because the desserts are so delicious, but also because the atmosphere of the place was the Graduate Institute. You had everybody who studied there, all the different master's degrees, all types of people. Like today, I really enjoy this atmosphere. Okay, so what did we plan for for the events. Our chapter has an opportunity, or hopefully will have the opportunity, to have formal lectures. You all know that the professors of the Graduate Institute are top-notch, so we will hope to tap into that top-notch knowledge and hold some lectures so that we can spread the knowledge, which is one of the most important parts of the Graduate Institute, I think. Then, maybe something less intellectual would be a Stammtisch, a monthly reunion that we could have anywhere in Beijing, where we could meet, we could talk about experiences, maybe future job opportunities, we can network, exchange Minkian, etc., etc. Then another thing, I've already mentioned it, is the cooperation with the embassy. So the alumni events here are certainly something that the Beijing chapter of the Graduate Institute would like to participate. I'm looking at you, Mr. Wasser. Please send us an invitation. Then we have winter events, we have summer events, and then the fourth thing that we would love to do is also a Q&A for future students. Help them, support them, tell them where the cheapest cookies are. Tell them where you can go shopping, maybe close by to the Graduate Institute. Some very nice Indian rice. I've never had that delicious Indian rice ever after. But also regarding, of course, what you study. Like for new students, I think that is a very important thing. This is also the reason why we have alumni events at the embassy. Then, of course, we would also like to promote the Graduate Institute. For those who follow the WeChat account of the embassy, we had a promotion of Swiss schools at Tsinghua University this summer, if I'm not entirely mistaken. I've seen a wonderful picture, and I would love to have more presentation for the Graduate Institute there. And last but not least, because I've been talking about the cafeteria all the time, we can also have sports events where we can go play badminton or go dragon boat rowing or things like this, depending on who would like to go. Good. So I hope I've entertained you. I see nobody has fallen asleep, which is a point for me. And I will hand over now to the most crucial part of the evening, to my colleague Tian. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Good evening, Mr. Ambassador, and dear alumni, guests, and my colleagues. Thank you for coming here today. I had the pleasure to introduce our statute. But before that, I would like to thank, in particular, Mr. Ambassador and also the embassy for the great support you give to us, and also thanks to the alumni for your very insightful advice in framing and finalizing the text of the statute. They're very helpful, and they evidenced the spirit of the institute, that is the commitment to excellency. So now the statute. Why do we need a statute? We're such a small group. Why should we have these rules, and we have to govern our conducts? It is exactly because we're a small group. We need to be structured and well organized for the purpose of development. Now the statute. As the Mr. Ambassador has introduced, there are principles during our study in the Graduate Institute, and there are 3 principles we learned from our study in the institute that they are permitted in the statute. First, the maximum participation of the members. Second, diversity. Third, responsibility. To the first point, the maximum participation. I think for most of us who have read through the statute, we see that several articles evidenced or manifested the principle of maximum participation. We encourage that every member is entitled to be the member of the administrative board, and every member has a voting right. And secondly, the diversity. I think anyone who studied in the institute, we felt nationality, diversity of ideas, and diversity of responsibilities. So I think, well, when you read through all these statutes, we will see that, diversity is encouraged simply everywhere. Thirdly, the responsibility. We see from the statute that, well, the administrative board will be organized, and the assemblies will be convened periodically, and they work for one simple goal. And this one simple goal is twofold. Internally, we want to encourage the network among the members of the alumni, and externally, we want to promote the brand of the institute, the place where we studied, and the place which we love so much. All these beautiful things would not happen if we could not adopt the statute. That's why at this time we would like to invite your vote on the adoption of this statute. And the rule is quite simple. We just follow the rule of raising your hand if you're in favor. And of course, if you're against it, of course you can raise it out, and we will take note. So for the next minute, I would ask for your permission to let me call your vote. So those in favor of the statute, please raise your hand. Wow, thank you so much. I think we don't need to count it.
I was just accurate for it.
Thank you. And those are against the statute? Thank you so much. So now I have the privilege to declare that the statute is formally passed, and it will be adopted. And that statute will be the guideline for the future activities of our alumni activities. Thank you so much.
So we invite attending members, please sign. We prepared your name. I think most of you could find your name on the last page of the statute. So please sign. And if you don't find your name, please write it. Yeah, probably we didn't anticipate that some of you are coming. Yes. So yeah, let's start from. Seconds.
Ladies and gentlemen, could I have your attention for just a last tiny second? Of course, we've already said that we love to see you here, but we would also love to remember everybody who's been here. So I'd like to invite you outside for a short group picture. And after the group picture, we can continue the signing process during the evening with some glasses of wine and juice. Thank you very much.
Thank you.